Hello and welcome to a brief tutorial on the DEBUG05-03 exercise. I thought it might be helpful, given how much trouble some have had with the debugging assignments, to try and create some additional video tutorials on the process of going through this. I probably could have picked a better one to do that's more complex and really showcases how you go through this, but I thought we'd just do this one real quick since it kind of fits in between the assignment and the last one we did. I know quite a few of you hopefully did the DEBUG05-02 assignment, so here's a little bit on the DEBUG05-03. The main thing when approaching these, like I said, this is not a great one to showcase that, but we're not reading it to proofread it like a composition paper. We're reading it to follow the logic. If you actually walk through step by step with the logic of the program and make sure you understand what happens, and if you're not understanding what's happening on the line, you got to go back to the book or whatever you got to do. Email me if you need to. But you need to understand what's happening, because if you don't, you're going to miss bugs. And you have to go through and run through all the different scenarios and follow the logic in order to determine whether the program is doing what it's supposed to do. It's really easy to look at the code and go, oh yeah, that kind of looks right. I mean, oh, if it does this, then it's going to do that. Okay, yeah, if it does this, it's going to do that. And just we tend to read. It's the same thing where if somebody misspells a word or sometimes even puts the wrong word, if you're reading through like a paper or something, I've done this a lot. I've completely missed errors because I knew what they were trying to say, and my brain just filled in automatically. Oh yeah, that's what they mean. That looks right. But in this case, every little detail has to be right, so you really have to double check everything and make sure that what you want to happen is actually what's happening. So that's the way to approach these, if that helps you, hopefully. This is an extraordinarily simple program. We have the mainline logic is always your start to your stop. We have modules in other programs. We don't in this one. Like I say, it's very simple. We have our declarations here, and well, first of all, let's read what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to display every combination of 3 digits. So it's going to display 000, 001, 002, so on, and all the way up to 999, I guess. 000 through 999 and everything in between. And so let's see how it does that. I don't know if you have any ideas of how that would work yourself, but let's just take a look here. So we declare 3 variables here, and then the first thing we do, the first action, is we check to see if digit 1, this is a while statement, so this is a question, and this has to evaluate true or false. Every time you see this kind of thing in a while or in an if, this has to evaluate true or false, and you have to determine whether it is true or false, and then and if you have to put in some fake data, like, well, what if the user typed this? Now this doesn't involve user input, so you don't have to do that, but that's the kind of thing you have to go through here. So let's look at this. While digit 1, and we have to determine what digit 1 is contains, what it's equal to, while it is less than or equal to 9, so is that true or false? Well, what is digit 1? Well, at this point, it's an undefined variable. I mean, it's been declared, but it has not been initialized. So digit 1 has a null value. Well, null is not even valid. It can't be compared to another number. So that's actually a bug. And as we see here, we do the same thing with these others. That's going to be a bug for all of these. None of these have been initialized. So we need to initialize them with 0, because we're going to display every number combination. We're going to start at the bottom here. How do we know we're going to start at the bottom? Well, I guess technically we don't necessarily, but as we look down here, we see that we're incrementing by 1, so we know we're not going backwards, we're going, we're counting up, so we can assume that. I mean, we'll prove that here in a moment, actually. We shouldn't assume anything, but that's a good starting point. So we did those, and then, so now we know 0. Okay, well, is 0 less than equal to 9? Well, that's going to evaluate true. Since it's true, what we do with loops, if they're not true, we skip them. We go on to the next thing. But if it's true, the loop control question is true, we do what's inside of it. Well, the next line inside of it is another nested while loop. So we say, well, while digit 2 is less than or equal to 9. Now we fixed all these, so now we know digit 2 is 0. So 0 less than or equal to 9. Well, that would be true. So we execute the next line of code. Is digit 3 less than or equal to 9? Well, again, we have to know what digit 3 is. We can't just read it as the variable, we have to know what is contained inside of it. And we know based on this that it's 0. So also true. Next line of code. We're going to output digit 1, digit 1, digit 1. Well, that's going to output 0, 0, 0. This is the concatenation operator, which just means we're going to display one thing after another, one value after another here. But that's not what we want to do. We want to display every combination of the 3 different digits. So even though for this first time around we'd actually get 0, 0, 0, which would be correct because digit 1 is equal to 0, the next time around when we increment these, we would continue to get whatever digit 1 is and not if we've changed these others. So logically that's kind of obvious that that's not correct there. So we're going to go ahead and change those. And then on this innermost while loop, we're going to, once we've displayed that, we've displayed 0, 0, 0, we're going to take digit 3 and we're going to increment it. We're going to give whatever value digit 3 is, which happens to be 0, and add 1. And that's going to make digit 3 now equal to 1. Well, we've reached the end of the contents of the while loop, which means we end up at this side of the end while. When we hit that, we go back up and we ask this question again. Well, now digit 3 is equal to 1. So is it less than or equal to 9? And it is still. So then we would continue to do this. And this is where actually I kind of jumped the gun. This is where we would actually realize that digit 1, digit 1, digit 1 is actually a logical error, because at that point we would be again displaying 0, 0, 0, even though digit 3 is 1, and we'd just continue to display 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, until eventually we would display 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, you know, all those times, and we would never actually display all the different combinations. So this is kind of where we see that. But now we know we would display 0, 0, 1, increment it again, it's now 2, so 0, 0, 2, and so on. That's going to go all the way until when it becomes 9. When it was 8, we displayed 0, 0, 8. Then that became 9, so we came up here. 9 is less than or equal to 9. It is equal to 9, so that's still true. So we do 0, 0, 9. Now we increment it again. Now digit 3 is actually going to be equal to 10, which makes it 2 digits. So that is that's not quite correct there. And actually, now that I realize this, I think there's another bug here that I may not have even realized, to be quite honest with you. But we'll get to that in a moment. So we've now displayed all those combinations. Now we need to display digit 2, or we're going to increment digit 2 rather. And the way we do that is not by adding digit 1 to it, but by adding digit 2. So the value of digit 2, adding 1 to it. So now we have digit 2 is equal to 1, digit 1 is still 0, and we come to the front end of this end while. So we come back up here, we actually ask this question again. It's still less than or equal to 9, so we go back to this and we ask this question again. Well, where we left digit 3, it was actually a 10. So it is going to be false, and it's going to skip this and come down here. The digit 3 is going to remain 10. No output is going to be output, and we're going to increment digit 2. We're not going to output anything at this point because of the way this is coded. So we actually have a bug, because at this point we would continue to increment this and go round and round the same way we did here, but we would never output anything because this statement would still be false, and we would skip our output statement that's contained in this while loop. So that indicates that there's a bug here. Let's just go ahead and follow this on out. Once that went all the way around, we would eventually get to the point where digit 2 was equal to 10, and we would skip that while statement. We would start incrementing this. Well, incrementing digit 2 by adding 1 to digit 1, that's not what we want to do. We want to increment digit 1 at this point. So we actually change that, and that would be correct. Digit 3 gets incremented on the innermost, digit 2 here, digit 1 here. And the reason is that's our counter for the loop. So at this point, once we've output 0, 01, 002 through 009, we no longer output anything. We increment all these until they're all false, and then we stop the program. We've only output like 10 lines, 10 possible combinations. So clearly we have a bug. And I kind of misled you, actually, to be quite honest. It was my own fault because I actually forgot how this one worked. Which is, again, why you have to step through the logic, because if you don't, you will miss stuff. You will mess it all up. These variables do have to be initialized, but they should not be initialized up here necessarily. Where we need to initialize them is going to be inside of these while statements, so that as it goes back around, it will be correct. Digit 1 does need to get initialized out here before. Let's actually go ahead and make that happen on another line, just so it's a little bit more consistent here. And hopefully you'll follow in a moment here why we do this way. So digit 1 is equal to 0 on the outside right before we hit this. It has to be initialized so we have a comparison, right? If we go all the way through here, what we noticed was the problem. Once we incremented digit 2 to 1, we never continued to output because digit 3 was still 10. So what we want to do is, once we've finished, going all the way around in this loop, we increment this. We want to reset digit 3 back to 0 so that it can go around again. So this is where we need to set digit 3 as 0. Will that logically work out? Yes, because we don't ask to do a comparison on digit 3 the first time, because remember, it's not initialized yet. We don't ask to do that until here, and by that time we've initialized it. So that will be correct. Digit 2 will get incremented to 1. Digit 3 will get reset back to 0. 0 is less than or equal to 9. Then we would output 0, 1, 0. We would continue to increment this. Remember, it just goes this far. It won't go back here and get reset until it goes back to 10. Then it's going to go back here, increment this, come back, and so on. So the same problem with digit 2. Once it does reach 10, it's going to go here, and it's just going to skip all of this and continue incrementing digit 1. So digit 2 actually has to get initialized right here in order for this thing to logically work. So I don't want to, I know this, there's 1,000 iterations of this. I don't want to drag you through trying to, really work through the process of each one, but hopefully you can see how that works at this point. If you follow that example a couple different ways there. So that is those are the bugs in that program. And while loops are a little bit more tricky, nested loops, I guess I should say, can be a little bit more tricky to figure out. But I hope that made sense, and you understand that you have to follow that logic all the way through, because again, even I, as a first glance there, oh, well, these aren't initialized, they need to be initialized. Now, if you do that and you follow through, what happens, you realize, nope, this program isn't doing what it's supposed to do. So it's not just about looking at how it looks, but what does it actually do? Does it do it? And if it doesn't, you gotta fix it. So cannot iterate that enough. Hopefully you understand that, and I will try to do more of these tutorials in the future to reinforce it. Thanks for watching.